Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 6 o'clock here in the morning, Wednesday morning, April the 6th. I'm glad to be here. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. I'm just drinking coffee and trying to wake up here. And I'm glad to be here, glad to be able to do these shows, and I appreciate everybody who's tuning in and taking the time to listen to my shows. I really appreciate it. I do a lot of shows, and it's hard to keep up with all my shows, even for me. So I know for all the people who are listening to live and listening to the archives, I really appreciate it. I want to continue talking about dysfunctional families. We're almost at the end. We're just getting down towards the very last part of the web page, and it's from George A. Boyd, 1992, When You Grow Up in a Dysfunctional Home. That's what the actual page is titled, the article. And it's from Mudrashram Institute of Spiritual Studies, and that's www.mudrashram.com. And I just found the article interesting. I just stumbled across it when I was just doing some researching and looking around for information for myself, And regarding dysfunctional families and codependency and behavior, boundaries, and what's the difference between a healthy family and a dysfunctional family. And I think it's a good article. I've gotten a lot out of it. And we're looking at the whole section of whole self, damaged self, and hopefully everybody else is getting something out of it too. So I want to finish this up and we'll move on. But I'm not a counselor or therapist. I always say this on every show. It's important for people to know I'm just a private citizen paying to do my own shows, and I'm a survivor of child abuse. I just want to be one more voice speaking out against child abuse, speaking, standing up and for child rights and, the protection of children, and also, the survivor, who wants to bring out awareness regarding the issues that many survivors of abuse have to deal with. You know what I mean? There's so many people who have survived abuse in, North America, all around the world, and a lot of people might feel that they're alone, and that there's nowhere to get help, and that there's no one that cares. But that's just not true. As I started to reach out 4 years ago, I found that a whole lot of people were reaching back out to me with their hands open to me, saying, come on, you can do this. And it's great to have that support. And so I thought, well, I just want to add my voice to everybody else's voices out here who are speaking up and reaching out to people, to say, look, we certainly deserved a lot better as children, and we certainly didn't deserve to be abused in any way. And so, and also just to be another voice out here speaking out about the issues of child abuse, right, and what it does to people. It's horrific. I say this almost every show, but that's because of the truth of it. It's absolutely horrific what people do to their children and other people's children, and what children have to go through and try to survive, and then try to survive into their adulthood. And many times people don't ever disclose the abuse. They suffer along in it, and it's such a hard place to be. So I just want to be one more voice. So you have to listen to my shows at your own discretion, because I'm talking about abuse, and abuse is a very sensitive subject, and you have to know what's good for you to listen to. So if you're just beginning your healing journey and not that far along, and you're listening to my shows, you make sure that you're in a safe enough place to listen, that you won't hurt yourself or somebody else. And if you're a young person under the age of 18, I just ask that you have permission to listen to my shows, and that's because I believe in protecting children at all times. And I think that children should know how to keep young people under the age of 18. You should know how to keep yourself safe online. It's very important. The FBI has a great website. They have a lot of good information on that website about internet safety for children, internet safety for parents, and make sure that you get that information if you don't know how to keep yourself safe online, and then learn it, and then do it, because you need to protect yourself at all times. And the FBI.gov, that's where, I'm actually... I like that website. They have some great information on there. It really gives you a good idea of what is happening out there and how many child sexual predators and pedophiles are actually online at any given time trying to get a hold of children. So it's so important that you keep yourself safe. And there's a lot of adult content on my shows, and I'm talking about abuse, and so it's a very sensitive subject. And I think that young people, if you haven't heard a whole lot about abuse, you may find the material, confusing and what I'm talking about. So I think that, young people under the age of 18, I just ask that you have someone listen to the show with you who's older, an adult who can help you make the decision whether you should be listening or not. So I appreciate it. Thank you. So we're going to get right into this article here, and we're going to finish this off. I did pop this into the chat room. It's from www.mudrashram.com /dysfunctional family the number 2.html. And I have my friend Bill Murray here in the chat room again this morning. That's awesome to see you. Hello, Bill. And hopefully you're having a good morning and everything's going well. And Bill Murray, you can catch the show Stop Child Abuse Now. That's Scan here on Blog Talk Radio, and that's www.blogtalkradio.com/Bill Murray, BILL-MURRAY. And Bill Murray and Jessica and other guests and other co-hosts actually host the shows with him Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that's I believe I'm correct in that. And they're doing a show about child abuse, issues surrounding child abuse, and also for survivors. We're sort of similar in what we're doing as far as trying to get the information out. And they have a great website. They're part of it's the NAASCA. I believe Bill Murray heads that up, the National Association for Adult Survivors of Child Abuse, and that's http://NAASCA.org, National Association for Adult Survivors of Child Abuse. And I was on that website. That's a great website. Lots of good information for people. It's also a place where survivors can. It's like a resource really for survivors of child abuse who may be looking for a friend, for somebody to talk to, and so many times there isn't anybody to talk to in our own lives, you know what I mean? I know this, you know what I mean? So it's important to reach out. And I really like the website. Look, it's good information there. So I just wanted to give everybody a heads up. And I'm actually able to catch at least half the show now that I know it's there. That's Stop Child Abuse. That's Scan. That's Stop Child Abuse Now, SCAN. And so that's on here on Blog Talk Radio. So that's a great show. Everybody will go and check that out. If you're listening to the archive or you're catching this live, make sure that you do check that show out because it's got some great information on there and awesome people that come on and speak. And it's very informative. I find it very informative, and I think that it's just another resource for me as a survivor of child abuse, right? And so thanks, Bill. I appreciate that. So we're going to get right into the end of this topic here, and we were looking at whole self-damage self. This is from George A. Boyd, when you grow up in a dysfunctional home. We're getting down towards the end of the article here, but this last piece is very interesting to look at. I think it's really good, worthwhile taking a look at it. So I'll just scroll down here. It's towards the bottom of the actual page. It's quite a long web page. Whole self-damage self, and so we left off talking about the education issue. They're people who have grown up in dysfunctional families, dysfunctional homes, says their acting out as adolescents may have interfered with their education, and their emotional tension may have interfered with their ability to concentrate and to study, limiting their job prospects and confusion, which affected their school performance. And I mean, lots of people have these issues, even if they grew up in perfectly normal homes and perfectly fine, healthy homes. But it just increases the odds, that someone, growing up in a dysfunctional family, dysfunctional home, or abusive environment, may not do well in school. I mean, I know myself. I didn't really do all that great in school. I did go to school and I graduated, which was pretty good, but I didn't do well just because I couldn't concentrate, and I was, not, especially as a young child, I was just not functioning well because of the abuse in the home. So at school, I was quite often worried that someone in my home was going to be killed, and that was a daily fear of mine. That but when I got home, I never knew who was going to be alive, whether it was my mother or my dad that would have killed each other, or maybe they would both be dead. Because my parents were vicious and very violent towards each other when I was very small, especially. And I was quite concerned really for my mother's health, because her health was always at jeopardy, and just the issues with the domestic violence and abuse that was going on between them. I had a lot of fear that at school that one of my siblings would be coming to get me from school to tell me that one of my parents was dead, and this was a fear of mine. I actually could not concentrate on my schoolwork really all the way through elementary school and junior high because of this, right? And also, just being up all night, listening to them fight, and listening to the arguing and the fighting and things getting broken and people getting hurt. That's a hard lifestyle for a child who's trying to get some sleep so they can go to school the next morning, because we had to go to school the next day. We were not allowed to stay home, and because it was safer at school, right? A lot safer at school. So, we were made to go to school, and so, which is a good thing, really. But I didn't do so well in school. I was always nervous and uptight and looking at the clock, and wasn't concentrating on my work, and I was exhausted. I was wiped out as a child. I never got a good sleep, and I talk about this a lot in my morning shows here, because my dad was schizophrenic, and he would, at night especially, would walk around saying he was going to kill the family, that he was going to kill us when we were sleeping, and that he should kill us all because God would want that, this type of stuff, right? Now, this was not something that he said like one time. This was something that I grew up listening to. So I did have a bit of a fear that my dad would try to kill us all when we were sleeping. I never really slept all that well, not only because of their fighting and the abuse within the home as far as their domestic violence and abuse, but just the environment that, my dad was always thinking about killing us, and generally it was at night when he would say stuff like that. And so, I actually used to sleep with a knife when I got older, like around 8, 9 years old. I remember putting a steak knife between my mattress and the springs, just to. I thought, if he tries to kill me or my mom tries to kill me, it won't be me that goes. That was in my mind, that I would try to protect myself. So I had this desire to save my life, even as a small child, which is absolutely insane that a child should have to feel that way. But that's when people threaten your life. That's what it's either fight or flight, So I was pretty determined. I thought, no, especially if my parents try to kill me while I'm sleeping, I'll fight back for sure. So I had a knife there, and I thought, man, if my mom ever finds this knife, I'm in big trouble, because my mother was my main abuser. And I thought, man, if she ever decides to flip the bed around or change it or whatever, my mother didn't do a whole lot of that kind of stuff. We had to make our own bed, and so I was kind of pretty sure she wouldn't find it. But, it's just, I thought, I don't care, I'll take a beating for that, you know what I mean, because I want to be able to protect myself. It's absolutely ridiculous that an 8, 9-year-old child should feel that way. But, that's what happens when people threaten children's lives, and especially on a regular basis, and it's not something that's just a one-time thing or, sort of out of the ordinary. This was the norm for me. So, yeah, it was absolutely harsh, and as I didn't do well in school, none of my siblings did well in school. Many of my siblings dropped out, and as a matter of fact, I was the only one that graduated. My sister would have graduated, like I was talking about yesterday, but so many, then I started doing drugs at the age of 12, and, PCP and angel dust and whatever I can get my hands on. And really wasn't able to concentrate after that in school, because that was when I was going right into high school. I started school young. I started school a year early, so I entered into high school just turning 13. And so 8th grade, 9th grade, I was starting to get high every day, was not able to function, wasn't even able to remember my locker number to get my books, and I didn't half the time know where my locker was, and I was just high all the time from then on. And so, I didn't do all that great in school because of that, right? So it kind of did limit my, for me, for later on in life, to try to go and get into college or university. But I knew another girl who was being abused, and I, at the time, knew she was being abused, but I didn't know exactly what was going on in her home, and she would not talk about it. And a lot of my friends were being abused, and it turns out her father was raping her. And I felt so bad when I found that out. She did tell me years later, actually, after we graduated high school. But she was actually the opposite of me. She was a person who would study so hard. She was very, very smart, and she had to have all straight A's. If she had anything less than an A, it was the end of the world. She would actually fight it so it could be changed to an A, because she wanted to go to the university to get away from her situation of being raped by her father, and she wanted to get her younger siblings out. She was afraid that maybe he was doing something to them at the time, or maybe she was fearing that he would. So she wanted to get a university degree and get her siblings out of the home with her. So she was working overtime to try to get a really good grade in high school, whereas I was just kind of struggling along and barely passing my classes. So it doesn't necessarily mean that somebody who's grown up in a dysfunctional home or who's been abused will always not do well at school. That's just that, in my case, that was the case for my family and my siblings. But it's not always the case, because I've seen it firsthand, where somebody will go the other way and be an overachiever and do really well, just because of their situation. So it's harsh on people, really extremely harsh on children. Another issue is that their rebellion may have led to legal entanglements, especially in youth, teenage years of growing up in a dysfunctional home, growing up in a dysfunctional family or abusive family. I know myself, I was always just one step shy of the other side of the law. I was always trying to make sure that I was that I did not get in trouble with the law, and that was because my mother was just so vicious that she was quite often saying she didn't care if her children were breaking the law. She didn't want as long as she didn't know about it and they didn't get in trouble. So it's pretty harsh. Like my siblings were up to no good. Many of my brothers were doing time in jail and doing time for kind of petty stuff, you know what I mean? But a lot of it had to do with drug-related issues, drugs and things like this, and so thefts and whatnot, right? It's just kind of, not too, violent of crimes. We're talking about kind of just a criminal element, And one of my brothers did time in prison because he forged a check, but he said that he was forced to forge a check. His life was threatened, or if he didn't forge a check, but we don't really know the truth of that. And then he was murdered. Like after he was 19 years old when he was murdered. So, he did prison time when he was 18, and then he was murdered when he was 19. And I was 7 years old, just turning 8 years old. So pretty sad, but. So my siblings had issues with the law, and myself, like I was always just one step shy of being on the wrong side of the law, But I tried really hard to keep myself, from getting in too much trouble. I didn't have, too much trouble, Like I was arrested one time, and my friends for going on a military base where we weren't supposed to be going, and things like this. It was all pretty. Kind of childish stuff, you know what I mean? But it was doing things that were against the law, and I was using drugs, and I was part of the criminal element, you know what I mean? But I really didn't want to be, you know what I mean? In my heart, like I really wanted to stay on the right side of the law, you know what I mean? Something was kind of always pushing me to, and it was, probably my friends, and just the idea that, I didn't want to cross that line and end up on the other side of the law, being in trouble all the time with the police, because I had a lot of respect for the police, because the police, when the police would come to our home, when they were called, they were generally, trying to help, you know what I mean? It wasn't a situation like I looked at the police as a helpful thing, because the police, who are you going to call when somebody's abusing you? Who's going to call when there's a family fight going on and somebody needs to phone the cops? You know what I mean? Like I have a lot of respect for the police, and I always did, even as a young person, even though, I was kind of cocky and stuff. But we, even my friends, we were pretty much respectful to the police that we ran into. And I always, was very thankful for the police that were willing to take a look at the situation. Quite a lot of the times they knew we were just up to kind of kid stuff. And so they would just tell us, you guys don't want to be crossing the line into the other stuff. You know what I mean? Because it'll ruin your life, So they were actually trying to be very good, and I actually had a lot of positive experiences with police officers. And so I wanted to be a police officer, and I couldn't get in because of my ankle. I had shattered my ankle in a car accident when I was 18 that left me, pretty much somewhat crippled. So they wouldn't take me. They said, well, how are you going to chase down the criminals? You can't be shooting them down. And I was like, oh, that's too bad. I really wanted to be on the police force, right? But that's too bad. But they were like, you can get into civil service. I'm like, no, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be a police officer. So that's the thing, it's just, we make these choices, right? But, dealing, you just can't, you just have to go with what you got. But yeah, lots of times people who have been in these situations growing up in dysfunctional homes end up on the wrong side of the law and end up, ending up kind of messing up their lives, because then they have a record to follow them the rest of their lives. And that's what I did not want. I was like, my siblings have already done, prison time, jail time, and my siblings, my brothers actually went on to do quite a bit of jail time and prison time. And all for pretty stupid stuff, robbing banks and things like this. And I really did not want to have that criminal type element following me as far as a rap sheet for the rest of my life. You know what I mean? So I was very careful to stay on the right side of the law. But I know some of my friends were not, and so some of my friends, have. I mean, they just didn't know how to stay on the right side of the law, and I would try to help them. I would try to be convincing to them and be like, you don't want to get yourself in trouble. You don't want to get yourself, and they just couldn't. They were abused as well. That's the issue. A lot of my friends were growing up in dysfunctional homes and abusive environments as well. And so I saw this in my whole life growing up, and saw what it does to people. And also, they may be out of touch with their feelings and their spirituality and lack a sense of meaning in their lives. That's people who have grown up in dysfunctional homes and grown up in abusive environments. George A. Boyd says they may be out of touch with their feelings and their spirituality and a lack of sense of meaning in their lives. And I think that can happen to anybody. It doesn't necessarily mean the person's been abused or living in dysfunctional environments just because they're out of touch with their feelings and spirituality. It's just that it kind of can make it sort of seem worse. You know what I mean? I know as a child, especially a young teen, I used to sit in the backyard and I'd just be cursing God. I'd be cursing at him. I knew I believed in God. I had no trouble with that. Excuse me. I just used to curse him because I'd be like, why? How could you leave me here in this mess? Because he would take people around me. And my best friend was killed by a drunk driver. She had a dream, and she told me about this dream that her fiance had been killed, and he was in a coffin. And she asked his parents what had happened, and his parents said it was a car. So he had been hit by a car. Well, her fiance had the same dream at the same time, and it was her in the coffin, and it was her parents standing there, and she had been hit by a car. So she told me, they had called each other, and they were upset about the dream. And she told me about it a few months prior to, and it was going to happen on, the dream happened on prom night. And so she told me about this. I said, well, prom night, you just don't drive and have somebody else drive you and make sure that you're not, that you're careful, right? So, just don't worry about it. It's probably just a dream, right? And that night she actually she got in a bit of a fight with her fiance. They didn't go to the prom. She went over to his house to make up to him, to try to make it up, and she went off the side of the road and hit her head and came up on the embankment walking up and got hit by a drunk driver. And so she was killed instantly by a drunk driver. So the dream was true. It happened on prom night, and so that's one of my stories that's in my book, A Life of Death, The Redemption. And that was pretty hard to me. That friend of mine was my friend from the time I was a baby. She was a really good friend of mine, and we grew up together kind of like sisters. And she was always looking out for me. She was the only person who was looking out for me, as a matter of fact, and she was a year older than me. And so in school, she would be looking out for me. She wasn't in my same grade because she was a year older. She was in the next grade up. So, we weren't in the same classes together, but she was always there for me in the halls, looking, watching out for me. She would come and check on me in my classrooms to make sure I was okay. Like, she had a sense that I needed that protection, that I needed somebody in my life to look out for me. You know what I mean? It was very, very cool. And so she did that all the way up until she died. And so, I used to curse God in the backyard. I'd be like, why did you take her? She had a good, loving home. Her parents loved her, and her family loved her. And I said, and here I'm stuck in this home where I'm not wanted. I've been told I've been born out of rape, and my mother hates me, and she wishes I was dead on a regular basis. This is what my mother used to tell me, like, not every day, but I would hear this quite a bit, right? And, I thought, how can you take her and you leave me in this mess, So I had a lot of problems with spirituality. I had a lot of problems with God, you know what I mean? And as far as Christians went, I didn't trust Christians because my dad was a Christian and used to come home on Sundays and beat up on his family, So, like, every Sunday, that's Sundays, I have a huge issue with Sundays. I still have problems with Sundays, very triggering day for me because Sunday was hell in my home. And the whole idea of Christianity just really, didn't sit well with me. I really didn't trust Christians, but I knew who God was. I was just mad at him, you know what I mean? And so, I had a huge issue with that. And as far as a lack of sense of meaning in their lives, it took me really, all the way through my 20s and 30s just to try to get in touch with myself, you know what I mean, to try to find out who I really was, who I am, I spent my whole life trying to please my mother, you know what I mean, trying to get some sort of love and some sort of something back from her, which never did happen. And And then at the end of that, 30 years old, after my mom passed away, trying to figure out who I was. It's been an incredible journey. And the thing is, we have to go through it at some point. Everybody on this earth, even if whether you grew up abused or not, we have to find a sense of meaning, purpose in our lives. You know what I mean? And find that place inside of us that allows us to feel, good, whatever it is, spiritual, whether it's some type of spirituality, so we can be our whole self. You know what I mean? And I know myself, I'm a Christian, and now because I'm okay with the whole thing, but I know when I was growing up I really wasn't. And I was born again 4 years ago, and I have a show here on Sundays that I do, which I really like to do, just to talk about the Word and stuff. So, but hey, I mean, whatever anybody finds that brings them peace, whatever someone finds that just really truly brings them peace in their heart, peace in their minds, peace in their lives, peace in their bodies, a sense of peace that would come around us, and then just knowing that we can heal, we can feel better, we can achieve some of our dreams and goals, maybe not all of them, but some of them, and just make sure that we do have a purpose and a sense of meaning. Just by being here, I mean, we have a purpose. We affect everyone's lives, right? And so, even if we don't think we're all that important to anybody, there may be somebody out there who just thought that person's really, really important to me. You know what I mean? And you may not even know it, that you're important to that person. They may not tell you, but you may affect someone's life and not even realize it. I know so many people have affected my life in so many ways, positive ways, that they didn't even know it. They had no idea, and it's just mainly because of the issues of being abused and growing up in this horrific hellhole of a home, that so many people outside of my home were such huge influences to me that now as an adult I'm trying to actually get in touch with these people to tell them what an influence they were on my life. You know what I mean? That if they weren't there, I truly believe I wouldn't have made it. And so that's the issue. People do affect people's lives whether we even know it or not. So we all have a purpose, we all have a meaning, and we all belong here. And so it's good when you can think of something like that. I mean, I know lots of people have told me the same thing, that I've affected their lives. Even when I was a teenager, some of my friends would tell me stuff like that. They'd be like, "We're glad to have you in our lives because there's no positive anything in our lives except for you trying to say, hey, we got to hang in there. We have to try to have a good life." I guess I've always been sort of trying to to achieve peace in my heart, even as a teenager and as a young person. The aftermath of the abuse, and watching my friends suffer because a lot of my friends, like I said, were being abused and had horrific home lives, and I used to try to help them and try to talk to them, and try to make some sense out of the whole thing, and we would try to help each other that way. And I think it's important. We all matter. We all count, and so that's why it's so important that you reach out and get some help. If you're suffering along in this and you're thinking, man, I don't know, what's my purpose? How am I going to heal? How am I going to feel good? Well, you do have to reach out. And I know when to somebody, even just a good friend, somebody you trust, I mean, whatever works for you. We're all different, but it's important to reach out and not suffer on your own and suffer in silence and sadness. I mean, that's such a sad place to be. And I know when I first started reaching out ago, like I said, I couldn't believe all these hands that came back to me. The support, I've never had this much support in my lifetime, and it means a whole lot to me, for people to reach back to me and say, you know what, you do count, you do matter, your life is worth it, and you just keep reaching out and keep going, because I look to them as my examples. They're my examples that it is completely doable, but ultimately, we have to be the ones to reach out, because a lot of times people don't realize we're suffering. We're pretty good at hiding things. I think people who have grown up in abusive environments, grown up in dysfunctional environments, are really good at hiding our true feelings and hiding what we need, because we were not given what we need as a child, so we had to learn how to live without it. And so a lot of times as adults, we don't quite often show people what we need, and it's very important that people, reach out and get some help, you know. And if you can't cope, you phone a crisis line, but you do whatever you have to do to keep yourself safe and get some help, right? So thanks everybody for being here. I really appreciate it. I have some guests here in the chat room, and Bill Murray, thanks very much for being here, Bill. And be sure and tune into Bill's show Monday through Friday, and here on Blog Talk Radio, and on Sunday, and does 2 shows, 2 hours on Sundays, and all at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So Friday it's an hour show, Monday through Friday, and then Sunday for a 2-hour show, and all at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So be sure and check out Bill Murray's show. That's www.blogtalkradio.com/Bill Murray, BILL-MURRAY. Just awesome. Thanks everybody for being here. Have a great day. Take good care of yourselves. I'll be back on tonight. You can check my show page, as well as tomorrow with One Shot to Be a Survivor 2 and there. Take good care of yourselves. Make sure that you do get some help and you do stick around, you know, and do not allow this your past to destroy you. You know, we deserve to go on and have a good life, and the only people that can do that is us, right? We can't expect somebody else to do it for us. We really have to be in control of that and responsible for that. We couldn't help what happened as children. You can't help that. I mean, no child can ever help what happened to them no one can ever help what happened to them as a child, right? It's not our fault. But we do have to take responsibility for our adult lives, and we do have to get help if we need it, right? So there's no shame in that, right? Have a great day, everybody. Take good care. Bye-bye.